We are now going to move on to a new section called data handling. Data handling involves dealing with what we call data, which is just basically information about a topic. So here Ms. Gonzalez has data for the favorite sports of grade 4 scholars. So this represents the sports that the grade 4 scholars like and the number of scholars that like each sport. So for soccer, we have 10 scholars who like soccer. Netball, there are 20 scholars that like netball. Rugby, there are 15 scholars that like rugby. And cricket, there are 5 scholars that like cricket. So now this data has been presented in picture format, but what we can then do with this data, once we have collected it, we then can present it in a table. So we can present this data in a table. And the table will say favorite sports, so this will list all the sports, and number of scholars that like each sport will go on this side. So my first sport is soccer, so I'm going to write soccer on that side of the table. Then the number of scholars that like soccer is 10. So I'm going to put 10 over there. Do the same thing with netball. The sport is netball. And the data says there are 20 scholars that like netball. Then I have rugby. There are 15 scholars that like rugby. And lastly, I have cricket. And there are 5 scholars that like cricket. So all I've done here is taken the data that I have in pictures and numbers and put it neatly into a table so that it's easy to work with. Once you have put your data in a table, you can then use this data that's in the table to create what we call a bar graph. So we're going to create a bar graph using this data. The first thing that every bar graph has is a title, and it goes at the top here. The title of my bar graph is going to be, because my data is telling me all about the favorite sports of grade 4 scholars, so that is going to be my title. The favorite sport of grade 4 scholars. And because it's the title, I'm going to underline it with a ruler neatly. The favorite sports of grade 4 scholars. We are then going to take the information from this table and put it on what we call the bar graph. So we have 2 columns in our table. First one is favorite sport, and we have number of scholars. We are going to take the titles of each of these boxes, or each of these columns in the table, and we're going to put them on this side or this side of the bar graph. Now these different sides of the bar graph have special names. The bottom here going straight across is what we call the x-axis. The x-axis. And we usually take the first column of our bar graph and that becomes the x-axis. So because my first column here is favorite sport, on the x-axis I'm going to write favorite sports as my title, and I have my 4 favorite sports: soccer, netball, rugby and cricket. So I'm going to write here soccer, netball, rugby and cricket. Right, so I'm finished with my x-axis. I'm then moving to the next column, which is going to go on this line of my graph, and it is called the y-axis. The reason it's called the y-axis, and it's easy for you to remember, is the letter Y has a long tail going straight down. So the long side going straight down is the y-axis. So here I have the number of scholars. And I have to look at this data very carefully. And I can see I have 5, 15, 20, and 10. So when I put the numbers on this y-axis, I'm not just going to put any number that I think. I'm going to look carefully at the numbers I have here because they need to go in order up the side. So I have to count in the same amount going up the side. I can't just say, okay, I have a 5, so I'm going to put a 5. Oh, I have a 10, so I'm going to put a 10. And now I have a 20, so I'm going to put a 20. No, it has to count in the same number. So because I can see with this information, I can count in 5s and I'll be able to get to each one of these numbers. I'm going to make my y-axis in 5s. Not every table, every bar graph is going to have the y-axis in counting in fives. It depends on the data that you are given. Here I can see I can use fives, but in other cases you may have to count in ones or in tens. It depends on the data that you are given. So I'm going to count up in fives. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35. Even though I don't have a 30 or a 35 over here, I have to count in fives all the way up. I can't count in fives and then tens and then twos. It has to be the same all the way up. So now to draw my bar graph, I have to look at the data. Soccer, there are 10 scholars who like soccer and that is their favorite sport. So I'm going to go to the bottom here, which is soccer, and I need to go to the 10 here, and I need to go together and meet here and draw a line. So I'm going to use my ruler, and I'm going to say from soccer up to number 10, and I'm going to draw a line. Let's draw a line like this, and from that line I can then use a ruler and making straight lines create a bar. Right, this is why it's called a bar graph, because we're creating bars. It's very easy to read. Soccer over here, and I go 10 over here, it meets at 10. That means 10 scholars liked soccer. The next bit of data we have is netball is 20. So I'm going to go to netball here, and I'm going to go to 20, and using my ruler, I'm going to draw a nice straight and neat line, netball 20. Okay, now I've got it neatly and tidily so I can draw my bars. Okay, that's netball. Rugby, there are 15 scholars who like rugby, so I'm going to do the same thing. Here's rugby, here's 15. So I'm going to take my ruler, put it on 15. Rugby goes all the way up. I'm going to draw a nice straight line, and with that straight line I'm going to draw my bar with a ruler, always with a ruler. And the last bit of data I have is cricket. There are 5 scholars, so here's cricket over here. Here's the number 5, so I'm going to put my ruler on the number 5. Draw a nice straight line, and using my ruler make a nice neat and tidy bar. Right, so here is my bar graph. My title is The Favorite Sports of Grade 4 Scholars. On my y-axis I have number of scholars. On my x-axis over here I have favorite sports, soccer, netball, rugby and cricket. And I've used a ruler to go from the bottom to the top, draw a neat line, and it's easy for me to read now. If I wanted to know how many scholars play netball, put my finger on netball, go to the top, and here it's 20 scholars. Number of scholars who like rugby the best, put my finger here, all the way to the top, straight across. I'll use my ruler to help me. And I know that there are 15 scholars that play rugby. So this is how you take information or data, put it in a table, and use that table to create your bar graph. If you understand this now, please pause the video and try this example by yourself. You need to draw a bar graph on your whiteboard using the data in this table, and this table represents all the teachers' favorite ice cream flavor. So here I have the ice cream flavor, strawberry, chocolate, mint, vanilla and coffee, and the number of teachers that like the flavor. Remember to correctly label each column your x and your y axis, and put your x and your y axis on your graph correctly.